Hi, I'm Andy and welcome to Play It Loud. Today I want to talk a little about Pink Floyd. I saw a video earlier on where a chap in America who's selling albums said this is Pink Floyd week. Well, for some of us it's been Pink Floyd 40 or 50 years. This is not an album review. This is, if you like, a little bit about history, because I first saw the Pink Floyd 67, 68. I've talked before about seeing them in Hyde Park on a Sunday afternoon playing Saucerful of Secrets. I'm not going to repeat it, but it was a fabulous concert. I want to go into a little bit about those times. It's not funny because it wasn't at the time, but if you go back, if you can find any films from those times, we had long hair. Yes, honestly, I had long hair. We had Kafkans. We went to the Roundhouse. We went to the Middle Earth. We ate brown rice, macrobiotic brown rice. We had beads and we had tie-dyed shirts. And International Times was our magazine of choice, although you could barely read it because the way it was printed was on graphics paper. And I wish I could have kept a few of those. I think they're worth a few bob now. It was interesting times. They were so very different to the world that we live in now. And the Pink Floyd reflected those times absolutely brilliantly. Their first few albums, I hesitate to say they're overlooked, but everybody knows Dark Side of the Moon. Everybody knows, I think, Wish You Were Here. But the first album with Syd Barrett, the second album, Saucerful of Secrets, I'm going to move on to that because the Floyd in those days, they were always an experimental band. They were a theatrical band. They were I think the first people to really get into theatrics when they were playing. When they started Middle Earth, when they were playing the underground clubs, they had a light show. In this country, a light show was rare. I understand Velvet Underground had one in America. Now, who came first? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. But it wasn't usual for bands to go to that sort of length. It had a cost. They had to pay somebody, they had to get the kit, they had to play it. But it was, in my day and age, it was revolutionary and it was fantastic. And then they moved on and went into full concerts. I can remember a concert, I can't remember whether it was the Albert Hall or the Festival Hall. I've got a feeling it was a Festival Hall in the early 70s, maybe around 1970, because it was a long way before Dark Side of the Moon. And the Pink Floyd, as part of that concert, were banging bits of wood with hammers on the stage. They had people dressed as Michelin men, and big tyres around them, white, coming down through the audience as monsters. They were extremely theatrical. I think this was a time when they were doing a fair amount of acoustic stuff on stage, doing it live. Although I do remember, I think it was Interstellar Overdrive as the encore. Interstellar Overdrive live. I'm really glad that I got to hear that. Different days. But then we move on. They moved on. Echoes. Have you heard Echoes? We might come back to that in a minute, because this was a period when Pink Floyd were art. They moved away from, or moved into, they weren't a rock band at the time. Yes, I think for them it really was a question of art. And Echoes from Metal was a piece of music. And I think they were rightly very proud of it. They took it out on the road. They did it live. And they did it very, very well. And yeah, I'm purposely talking about a period before Dark Side of the Moon because it's not as well known, it's not as well recorded. And if you haven't heard these albums and you're a Pink Floyd fan, you're missing something. Later, I was fortunate. I think I saw an awful lot of Floyd gigs between 68, 69 and 83. So I saw Dark Side of the Moon when they played it before they had released the album. And it was extraordinary. It really was extraordinary. They had a thing called an azimuth coordinator. They did surround sound, and we're all used to surround sound now. You can practically get it on your headphones. But in those days, there was no surround sound. In those days, we'd only just got away from 60-watt amplifiers on stage, and the Floyd put big speakers all the way around the Albert Hall or Wembley Stadium or Wembley Empire Pool, I think it was at the time that they were playing. And they employed somebody specifically to send the sound of different instruments around the theatres, around where they were playing. And for those of us who were sat in the audience, it was fabulous. It was really different. I can remember, I think it was Wembley Park. The hall's no longer there. It was knocked down some years ago. But I think it sat 4,000 or 5,000 people, something like that. And Dark Side of the Moon there at one point, can't remember which track, I'm sorry, they had what appeared to us in the audience to be a full-size plane, Spitfire-like plane, come from the back of the theatre on wires, we couldn't see them, down onto the stage where it exploded in the back. It doesn't sound much, but at the time it was awesome. The Floyd, very, very theatrical. Again, really lucky at a concert maybe the following year. The Floyd opened the concert, the first half, with Wish You Were Here. They hadn't even announced the album. They were playing it to get a reaction, to find out if people liked Wish You Were Here. They were experimenting. They were playing. We'd never heard it before. Nobody in the audience had heard anything like it. And the whole of the first half was the Wish You Were Here album. Then they had an intermission. Then they played Dark Side of the Moon. You can move on a few years later when they were doing The Wall. Anybody was fortunate enough to see the Wall live. They built a wall on stage, not a little garden wall, a wall that was about 20 metres high by 60 metres long. It was massive. I don't know what it was made of. Got to be really light for Michael. I don't know what sort of bricks they would have used. Presumably it was done from the back by technicians, but from an audience point of view, they just built a big wall. And at one point, Dave Gilmour appeared on the top of the wall playing a solo in spotlights. Now, clearly he couldn't stand on the wall. I'm guessing he was on some form of crane behind it, but you couldn't see that from the audience. It was brilliant. The Floyd in their prime really were something to behold. So if this is Pink Floyd week, I think you owe it to yourself to play the Pink Floyd, to get it, to stream it, to buy it, to find a way of listening to it. And this wasn't a review, never meant to be. But Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii has just come out. It's available now. And this is the period I'm talking about earlier. This is the Pink Floyd Saucerful of Secrets, Echoes. This is the Pink Floyd in their pomp. Play it loud. You'll enjoy it. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe. Till the next time.